The Return, Chapter 1, The Newcomer. God knows it had been a tough few days. Vic was still damp from the first real shower she'd had time for since Monday, and her bag of sodden towels bumped sullenly on her hip as she made her way back to the interview room, where Novak was probably still browbeating their only living suspect. If she felt bad about leaving them alone together, she would have felt worse about sitting around with the junkie's vomit splashed all over the front of her worksuit. Truth to tell, after the first revulsion, she was glad of an excuse to get out of there. Time to wrap this up. John Doe could be kept cool overnight. She and Novak could get some sleep and try again. By tomorrow, the congratulation messages should start coming. More than a dozen Russian drug dealers, pimps, murderers, and general bad actors cleaned up in one raid. A dozen more of their hired muscle. That was pretty good going, even if the only person still alive when they got there was J.D., John Doe, who they had found cable-tied to a bed leg, slumped halfway under the bed itself, filthy and drugged out of his skull. He was too busy vomiting and shitting himself to even try to make sense of their questions. Novak, who never gave anyone the benefit of anything, least of all doubt, thought he was a member of the gang and should be treated as such, probably being punished for some infraction. He clearly spoke some Russian, though his English wasn't worth shit. Vic hadn't made up her mind. Well, there wasn't exactly much to go on, was there? When Vic saw him for the first time, he was standing outside the interview room, one palm against the locked door. The sergeant at the front desk would tell her later that he hadn't stopped for one heartbeat as he came striding through the front door. He'd walked straight past, vaulted almost casually over the turnstile, headed straight to the interview suite. The Secret Service guy who was trying and failing to keep up with him tried to give all the necessary details, permissions, warrants, all the authorizations that would have made the sergeant happy, but his first aim was to keep up with the Kerep. She thought for one second that she was looking at a costume, but when he turned, his most striking aspect wasn't that famous face, but his physicality, his size. She'd seen the movies. Who hadn't, except the guys living in caves in Uzbekistan? She thought him shorter, smaller. Kerep was short, everybody knew that. But this one was taller than her, looked down when he met her gaze. No, it didn't help that she had switched to trainers after the shower, but he was not a short man. And he was strong, physically strong, with large, long-fingered hands and skin that glowed with health. Blue skin, admittedly. Built. Not excessively so, no Schwarzenegger, but a gym-built body. Heavier than her, certainly. Much heavier than she had expected. And he was close enough and cross enough to be intimidating. More than expected. Expected? What the fuck was a Kerep doing in a police station? And why was he looking at her with such obvious annoyance? Her shoulder mic started to crackle, and she could make out the desk sergeant warning her that they had visitors. He was halfway through a description that would earn him a reprimand for racism when she stabbed the two-way into silence. I believe you have a Xonak in there. His American was perfect, way better than Novak's, and he was born here. His voice was mellow, and Vic tried not to stare at his mouth. It was like watching a dog talk. The suit arrived behind him, brandishing his Secret Service credentials, as if the tiny white spiral from his ear to his lapel wasn't enough of a clue. A Xonak, what makes you think? She wasn't keen on being challenged, and Novak would like it even less. He held her gaze quite gently and touched the door again, this time with his fingertips. Please. She pulled out her mag card. As they entered, Novak stood quickly enough to knock over his chair. Vic thought later that it could have been worse. He could have drawn a weapon in response to the surprise. But it was the suspect crouching on the floor and hugging himself that took all the newcomer's attention. He was in the corner next to a wastebasket to make it easier to limit the damage when he puked. He looked like the worst kind of rough-sleeping drunk. long, filthy, matted hair that hid his eyes, grey skin, and the smell, vomit and shit. Despite the station-issued onesie, which had been clean enough when he was given it, Vic was suddenly aware of how little real effort had been made to clean him up. Picking up a paper cup of water from the desk, Saameron crouched in front of him, spoke softly to him, offered him a sip. J.D. seemed confused, shook his head a couple of times, but took the cup in one shaking hand and drank. Saameron kept talking, pushing the matted hair gently aside to look into the man's face. He took back the cup to stop him downing it too fast, his hand gestures clearly saying, "Slowly, slowly." Vic raised a hand, trying to shut Novak down so that she could watch and listen. Eventually J.D. responded to something that Saameron said, looked up and made eye contact with the cherub. Novak huffed. "Well, that's more than I got." Purple. His eyes were purple. Astonishing, glowing purple. Jewel-like. Amethyst. Saameron let the man touch him, as if reassuring himself that he was real. Turning to Vic, he said softly, "I can't move him like this. You have a shower room." It wasn't a question. "I'll need towels, shampoo." He looked sideways at the matted hair. "Scissors." "Move him!" Novak was thunderous, gave his opinion long and loud, while Vic organized a uniform, complete with body camera, to supervise them in the shower. That would give her time to get a translator here. Tonight, not tomorrow, one of the E.T. worshipping geeks that would get so excited at the thought of watching a real alien, the real alien, and displaying their knowledge of the language. They probably spoke Klingon, too. "What the fuck did you just say?" Novak's fat red face was thunderous. "I asked if you arrested the dog." Novak stuttered and stumbled over the beginnings of several sentences. It was true that the ETs had no clear legal status, and it would be very hard to prosecute one, no matter what they did. But the canine comparison was tough to accept, even for him. He liked to comfort himself by saying that no one could call him prejudiced. He hated everybody equally, without fear or favour. "He has information we need." Perhaps. He's full of drugs and badly hurt, not making a lot of sense even in his own language. Nothing he tells you now can be used in a court of law. Surely it would be better for me to bring him back in a few days when he's clean. Clean of drugs, and clean of the filth that you have let him sit in. He didn't even try to hide his opinion of that. And when he can speak English. Sam permitted himself a tiny smile at that. It always impressed humans. The shower room was close by, which was fortuitous. Saameron half-carried the stinking wreck of what must once have been a very expensive Xonak, supported him delicately, trying not to hurt him further. One of the worst things about these people was the way they quite literally suffered in silence. Sam had once found a young dog in a dustbin. He kept him for a while, surprised himself with just how much he enjoyed the company of a carnivore. One night, after a couple of beers, he accidentally left him outside on the balcony, on a very cold night with snow coming. The dog sat, shivering in silence, waiting to be let in. No complaints, no insistence, no, "Hey, asshole, let me in." Just shaming gratitude when his idiot carer finally realized he was missing and condescended to let him back inside. Xonaks could be like that. This one threw up on Sam's pure white fruit-of-the-loom t-shirt. Not wanting to ruin his boots, he stripped down to just his jeans and tied back his long hair. The female police officer, body cam active, watched with delight as the famous tattoo appeared, inked so beautifully on his spine. She had volunteered her own towels and kit bag, her spare toothbrush, her scissors. Take it all, she thought. She would gladly have sacrificed much more to be the uniform in this room right now. She gazed as he gently stripped the semi-conscious Xonak of his paper-thin jumpsuit. Whoa, the guy was ripe. and it was quickly obvious that there was something very much not okay about the right shoulder. Sam talked to him, touched the shoulder, exploring, talked some more, reassuring him. Then he held his wrist tightly and slammed him bodily into the wall of the shower. Nobody was much surprised when he fainted. Silently. Sam sat him gently on a ledge and carried on washing him down until he started to come round. Some of the muck didn't move. It was bruising, not dirt. The policewoman watched with interest as he began cutting the matted hair of the semi-revived man. It was a long job, but he was starting to look almost human. Well, not human. Like a person. After nearly an hour of scrubbing and cutting and combing and tooth-cleaning, he was presentable. Saameron thanked her for a fresh jumpsuit and accepted a T-shirt for himself. Born in the USA, her favourite, and she was loath to part with it, though it was worth something to see him wear it. And he smiled happily when he offered his own, well-rinsed but still very wet, T-shirt as an exchange. Oh boy, she thought, that settles what to wear to bed this week, and she tried not to laugh out loud. Vic and Novak found it easier to get their reassurances from the Secret Service guy, Johson. 3 days. They'd be back in 3 days. You follow him everywhere to keep him out of trouble, to protect him. Novak's tone wasn't friendly. Johson smiled very slightly. Protect him? No, not so much. Then he huffed a small laugh. Where is he now? Probably getting your blonde officer's phone number if I know anything. But he was interrupted as Saam appeared at the door, jerking his head to say, Let's go, I'm hungry. Course you are, muttered Johson cheerfully as he turned to join him. Vic was busy seating the on-call E.T. geek in front of a video feed when Saam came back through the door alone. He nodded and smiled at the translator, said, Hi. Vic was pretty sure the little Japanese guy climaxed in his pants. He looked around the room. Novak? He's in the interview room. Saameron nodded his thanks and backed out. He found the older detective sitting at the bare table, rubbing his belly and belching uncomfortably over a folder of poorly typed reports. The older man rose and glared at him. Something I can do for you? Sam paused. Our sense of smell is a lot better than yours. I knew the Xonak was here because I could smell him. I found him the same way. Novak started to say something brutal about the way the man had stunk, making that easier than Saameron was making out, but the detective fell silent as the other man came towards him. He approached Novak closely, with the older man making a concerted effort not to back off. He put his face close to Novak's, breathed. You need to see a doctor. Now, tonight. Novak stared. Sam rubbed a knuckle against his mouth and sighed. I was going to leave without telling you. I was angry that you let him sit in filth, that you didn't find him help, left him in pain. He sucked his lower lip slightly behind his top teeth. Not proud of that. Sorry. See a doctor today, okay? And then he was gone. The language nerd was bouncing in his chair. They began by showing him the early interviews with J.D., what he'd said while Novak was shouting at him. It was surprising how much he'd actually said, mumbled softly. While it was true that his English was almost non-existent, he'd understood who they were and what they wanted from him, but apparently had nothing to offer them. He started by saying that he didn't know anything and kept saying it, quietly and politely. Yes, the nerd confirmed, he was talking Russian, bad Russian. Not all of it made sense. Wow, what a mess he was in. He didn't know anything. Nobody talked to him. They kept him, chained, drugged and chained. Could that be right? He didn't know who the other guys were. The guys who came in and shot them all. He didn't know who any of them were. Why they killed each other. He didn't know why he was left. Perhaps they thought he was dead. It occurred to Vic that J.D. had been lying there for at least 3 days, without food or water or drugs. The Japanese man looked up. He's just saying, I don't know anything, over and over again. Then came the best part, the conversations with Sam. Oh yeah, he's trying Xonak, but he's not getting any reaction. That sounds like ship speak. The geek glowed with happiness. His nickname was Otaku, which apparently is Japanese for geek. Oh my word, that's Haihanath. I've never had the chance. Oh my, he is saying he's here to help. Oh wow, Then they changed to the body cam shots from the shower room. Fuck, look how thin he is, and look at the bruises. Whoops. Oh, he's covered in it. There goes the t-shirt. Oh my God, look. He snatched up his phone, hoping for a shot of Sam's tattoo, but put it down sharply when Vic glared at him and threatened him with a night in a holding cell. He hit rewind, listened again. He's asking where it hurts. This might hurt a little. Oh fuck, that's a bit savage. Wow. He fell quiet as he watched Saam tend to the semi-conscious man. Well, he seems a bit better now. All that hair. You know you could sell that on eBay, right? The cuttings? He stopped the tape, paused. He keeps asking Saameron if he's real. He was silent for a second, then started the tape again. Now they're talking about... Oh, fuck, I don't know if you want to hear all this, I mean... He stopped, looked at Vic's arch expression. Okay, well, first he asks... Well, asks him not to put him back. Not to put him back in the room with the angry, fat, bald guy that shouts all the time. Sorry. Oh my God, that's a soother. He just gave him a soother. Oh my. He caught Vic's look and carried on. Saameron is reassuring him, and... You're sure about this, really? Well, okay. He says, you have my word you will never be alone with that savage again. And then, oh my, now they are talking about a woman. The beautiful one with skin like chocolate? Could he be saying chocolate? The little Japanese turned to share his enthusiasm for the language. We do the same in Japanese. If there is no traditional word for something, we might use the American word, but it gets changed in the process. So fork becomes forku, that kind of thing. I think he's using their version of the word chocolate. He realized eventually that while this was making him very happy indeed, it held no interest for the detective. Well, damn, what a buzzkill. He took a moment while Vic eye-fucked him. Then he twisted his mouth in a, well, you asked for it, expression. Ah, okay. Okay, then. Saameron is saying he might enjoy being alone with you for a little while. That's when the Xonak guy starts giggling. I really think he's just trying to cheer him up, you know? I don't think he means any harm by it. It was striking how simply Otaku said, the Xonak guy, not the guy with the purple eyes, no description. He knew what he was looking at. There was more. A lot of what the Xonak said didn't make much sense, except when he was saying how weary he was of Novak and how heartily glad he was that his owner was dead, and how nice it was to be clean. And then he threw up again, and there was more rinsing and wiping. And that was pretty much it. A report to fill out, then one very happy Otaku, full of the best night of his life, on his way home to share with his fellow geeks. Oh, joy. Vic went to check on Novak. It took time. Novak didn't share willingly. He resisted, but he dropped into an ER on the way home. He almost left after 2 hours of waiting, but was called just as he was standing ready to give up. The junior doctor found nothing at first and almost let him leave, until he mentioned that, believe it or not, a carrot had smelled his breath and suggested, strongly suggested, that he get himself checked out. Novak tolerated further tests, and then waited some more. And it was only in the small hours that the young doctor came back, asked him to stay on for a little while longer, so that they could discuss surgery.